Sorry, I'm still in Game of Thrones mind because alright. Okay, we're not talking about Game of Thrones. Today we're talking about The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath. Pronounce your words, Charlotte. I don't have a physical copy of this because I finished it on the weekend when I was staying at my mum's house and I left it with her to read, although she's probably not going to read it, like when she borrowed the Virgin Suicides from me and now she can't find it. And it was, anyway, just side plot. The Bell Jar, Sylvia Plath, was excellent. It was surprisingly brilliant. I remember, I didn't realise this until I started reading it again, but I picked it up 5 years ago or something and read the first couple of chapters and I just couldn't see it developing into something that I would find really intriguing, that I stopped, as I always did. But if once you persist, it's one of those things where like half, maybe less than half of the book takes place in one location. I mean, there are a lot of flashbacks, but one kind of situation, and then it moves away from that and you're like, oh, this is unsafe, I don't want it to move away from that, now it's going to be different and sad and weird. But actually, like, the new bit makes you think the old bit was like, why this was dragging on. It was so much more interesting to progress the plot. So if you don't know anything about Sylvia Plath, she's a poet mostly. This is her only novel that she's ever published, and it was published in 1963. And Sylvia Plath had suffered from depression almost all of her adult life, I believe, and she committed suicide, I think it was 3 months after this book was published. So it's a very... literally put all her heart and soul into it, because it's been described as quite autobiographical. So what happens in the book is there's a character, and she's just kind of living life and seems, a little bit distant from it. But I think if, like, any of us wrote our stories, we would all be a bit, not sure if I feel the same way about life as my friends do, like an understandable distance from what she's doing, but she's still doing it as a functioning member of society. And then she's somebody that always succeeds, somebody that is a scholar, an academic, always wins awards. And she's gone away to New York for a month as a winner of a magazine competition, spent with a dozen lovely young bright girls like herself, going to glamorous parties, getting big expense accounts, working on the magazine. And then she comes back from that and is with her mother, and she doesn't get onto a writing course that she planned on spending the next month doing, I believe. And it basically breaks her soul because she's used to succeeding and doesn't know what to do with her life now. She's at home and she's just fallen back into a monotony of... Do you ever get, like, I don't know if anybody here has this feeling, but you kind of... Once you've left the nest and you've gone to live somewhere else, even you can come home for a weekend, as I did last weekend, and be like, this is really wonderful because you feel very coddled and protected and safe because you're in this environment that you've maybe grown up in, but then you also feel this absurd monotony of not wanting to be the same person you were when you left, and not wanting, and seeing like how little your parents have, or whoever's still there, has progressed in the time that you have when you've been away from there. You know that if you stay there, you get sucked into that, and it'd just be horrendous. Anyway, character Esther, I believe is her name. If it's not, this is going to be really shit. Esther Greenwood. She's at her mum's and just very rapidly doesn't sleep for weeks, and goes to a psychiatrist and doesn't have anything productive, any productive discussion or medication or anything. and it's just kind of, and it's so beautiful, it's wonderfully described, because in this whole book there's no like, and then we drove here, and then it's just very much like we're in this state, and then when the use of this state has changed, and then we're here, you know, there's no like connecting prose, because it's pointless. And it's totally drilled in when Esther is describing why she hasn't showered in 2 weeks, and it's really touching and brilliant, and very, very rational. I mean, I suppose only somebody that was going through those things at the time, like Plath was, would be able to rationalize, not to herself, but to like her readers, why she hadn't slept or showered or whatever. And it's very much like anyone could fall into that very easily by just thinking those thoughts that we all do. Not just like I'm depressed, but like, why do we put value on anything in the world? And very easily fall into that very negative, cyclical way of thinking. Anyway, so Esther, then she gets suicidal, and for a while it's all about her contemplating, not even contemplating, knowing that she's going, there's never any kind of roundabout discussion about it. It's just like, I'm going to kill myself. How am I going to do it, and when am I going to do it? And like, oh, I just missed the opportunity of jumping off that bridge. Anyway, eventually she pops a lot of pills and hides somewhere, and she's found alive. So she wakes up in a hospital, in a psychiatric ward, and you know, everybody treats her as crazy, and she isn't. She's suicidal, yes, but she's not insane. She just has it's almost as if she just has a clearer grasp on the world, because she doesn't have to see it through, you know, those gold-tinted spectacles of being a practical member of society that earns money for a living and has to perform certain tasks and whatever. So yeah, and then she goes into a very fancy private hospital and kind of is improving. There's also like a lot of discussion in this book about like her virginity. She feels very... Sorry, my phone went. I was about to say, yeah, she's talks a lot about virginity and love, and her previous relationship, who is a bit of a d-bag, very presumptuous. It's almost an early feminist text about treating, because she's kind of treated as an object, to have... Okay, I'm being very weak about this, but to have kind of like ideas impressed upon, and then she's not really treated as somebody that could generate her own ideas about how she wants to live and why she wants to live that way. So a lot of it is kind of like, I don't want to be a virgin, but also I don't know whether I don't want to be, you know. And then in her path to recovery, she changes that state, and is completely fine with it, because it's obviously, by that time, it's completely redundant, irrelevant, although still something that was... I think it's just an interesting element to the story that you didn't... It's kind of one of those things that could culminate in anybody being depressed. Not like thinking about their virginity specifically, but just your place in the world, and why people have pigeonholed you into it, and how you could not be in that, and why you should not want to be in it, or why people would think, you know, there's much more complex reasoning behind a simple storyline in this book, which is lovely. But I really like how she recovers. Essentially, the ending is a kind of final stage of her having finished. She's kind of leaving this private hospital provisionally, And it's very hopeful. I mean, it's never even really mentioned like depression as a thing, or even like suicide as a concept. It's left between the lines that you should be thinking about those things, because it's not expressed. They just, I mean, it is expressed. I mean, it's not articulated, because it's just something that she decides, and you can see why she's decided it, but she doesn't have to explain it. And I think it's very, I want to talk more about Sylvia Plath, because it's kind of said that I believe, I'm not 100% sure about any of these things, but her kind of friends and family thought of it as a kind of, thought that she thought of it as a kind of petty piece of work that she used to get through a time, and then she kills herself. So I think it's really lovely that her character recovers, because if the character didn't, I mean, Plath would already be dead, It's almost as if she is at that point in the end, and then it's kind of could go either way. And you always want to assume at the end of books where it could go either way that it goes a positive way. But for the author it went the other way. This has been long. I'm sorry. So all the books I've read since the start of this year. I shall do more of these, perhaps, as the year progresses. This has been Charidzard. Charidzard, goodbye.